Hello, in this Adobe Illustrator demonstration, we're going to look at a few of the basics when using Illustrator. Look at how to create new files. We'll look at setting up a workspace, colors, how to change colors of stroke and fill. We'll look at the pen tool for drawing straight lines, and the selection tool for moving objects, and the direct selection tool for changing points on an object. So the first thing I'll do to get started is I'll come over here and hit Create New, and I'm going to go with inches, and I'll just go with a standard size sheet of US letter paper, and this will be an 8.5 by 11 inch document. No bleed, no additional things other than to change the resolution here to high. So here you see I have a standard size 8.5 by 11 inch canvas, or that's the sheet of paper size. Remember, a difference between Illustrator and Photoshop is that anything we do inside of Illustrator is raster, vector based, so that really behind the scenes what we have are mathematical formulas, and that's why changing things in Illustrator, or editing things, or creating things in Illustrator is different than the pixel based, those little squares in Photoshop. So the first thing we'll do, go up to Window and Workspace, and we'll set the Workspace to Essentials Classic. And you'll notice with regard to Photoshop, or when you compare to Photoshop rather, you'll see that you have this toolbar to the left, and you have several of the same style toolbars with name-based toolbars at the top. If you were to accidentally lose some of these, this toolbar for instance, or things didn't look quite right, you can go up to Window, Workspace, and you can just hit Reset, and that'll reset your Essentials. Also, you notice once I reset Essentials, my Layers tab isn't here. I can go to Window and Layers. I definitely want that showing, just like in Photoshop, and I'll drag Layers up in here. And I can get rid of some of these other ones, but Layers, just like in Photoshop, is an important tab to have open so we can see what we're doing. Just let me slide that over there. Okay. So next, let's take a look at colors up here. There are two spots for colors. You'll notice one is a solid color, and the other one kind of looks like an outline. This one here is the stroke color, and if you remember from Photoshop, or if you've used Photoshop before, stroke is the much like a border around the outside edge. We can change the color of that here. Notice here are colors for the fill, or what color, if we were to draw a shape, would the inside of it be. Pay particular attention to this one over here. It looks like a white box with a kind of a red strike to the left through it. This is no color. And when drawing shapes, no color, as you'll see in just a moment, no color allows you to see exactly what you're drawing, versus if you had a fill color in when you're drawing a shape. And again, you'll see what I mean here in a second, but I'm going to change this to no color. That's for my fill. That will fill my shape. And I'll leave my stroke color, or the outside border color, black. Okay. The first tool, really one of the only primary tools here, is the pen tool. I'm going to click the pen tool, and I'm going to go out here, and I'm just going to draw a rectangle. And when drawing in Illustrator, you place anchor points. So I'm going to anchor a point here, and then here, 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 and then I'll bring it back here. So that's using the pen tool to draw a simple rectangle. You'll notice right above the pen tool there's the selection tool, and with that selection tool, you can see there's selection tool and magic wand, group selection, and direct selection. But with the selection tool, I can select this, and I can move this rectangle around. Okay, that's the selection tool. There's also something called a direct selection tool, which kind of does what it says. It doesn't necessarily select the whole object or shape. It selects points, anchor points, along that shape. So here's the direct selection tool, and that will allow me to select this point, and then I could actually move it and change the size of the shape. So understanding the difference between the selection tool and the direct selection tool is very important. The direct selection tool allows you to highlight and edit anchor points, or the selection tool, if I go back to that, that'll just allow me to take this object, now not a rectangle, and move it around. Just like in Photoshop, you can hit Command Z and that will step you backward. If not one of the most important things is being able to step backward or undo errors. All right, so I'm going to go get the selection tool, which just allows me to move this around. And I'll go up here to the border color. You can see I can change the color of the border or the stroke to red. And you can kind of see it. But if I increase the stroke on it, I'll select it and then increase the stroke on it. Now you can see that border a little better. Inside the stroke menu, you can change the corners on the stroke or the border. You can change where it's aligned. And I'll go back to what it was. So you can change that stroke that way. And I'll bring that stroke back down a little bit. Stroke, border. There's the color. It kind of looks like an outside border. This box here lets you choose the fill color. I'll choose yellow. I can fill that with yellow, and I can click outside so I can see it a little bit better. I could click the object with the direct selection tool and change that color to green. I could click the object and change my stroke color to pink. Okay. So if you'll remember, I mentioned that it's easiest to draw a shape when you have no color selected. So I'll choose none, and I'll go back to black, and I'm going to draw a rectangle again, just like that. Whoops. Let's step backward to that. I'm going to draw a new one. So I'll get my pen tool and go to no fill. Oops. Let's keep. I'll select down here. And I'll draw another rectangle here. Okay, and you can see that this isn't exactly straight, so I can go into the direct selection tool and I can kind of grab a hold of that point and drag that out so I have a rectangle. I'll step backward from that and now go back to my selection tool and I can move it. So the point of that second rectangle, I can go take this first rectangle and I can fill that with yellow. And I can take this one now, and if I want to fill it, I can fill it with green. But the main idea is when you're drawing a shape, you want to have no fill. Otherwise, it becomes maybe a little more difficult to draw a shape. Here you'll see what I mean. I'll make this red and black. So I'm going to draw another shape with the pen tool, and instead of no fill, you'll notice I have red. Now watch what happens. So as I begin to draw this, it fills up with that color while I'm drawing it, which, depending on the shape, it can make it a little bit more difficult to draw because it's filling up around you as you draw, and it can just become kind of tricky to see exactly what you're doing. So I'm going to step back, and I'm going to go make this no fill with my pen tool, and now I'll draw a rectangle with no fill. And now I'll take my direct selection tool and fill it with a color. So when you're drawing a shape, and this is a simple rectangle, but when you're drawing a shape, you want to use that none or no fill option so you can see better what you're drawing. We have over here the selection tool, which allows you to move the entire object. The direct selection tool, which allows you to move the direct selection tool, which will allow you to move anchor points within an object. And now I can go back to that and move it over here. So know the difference between the direct selection tool and the selection tool. And then we use the pen tool today. In the next video, we'll look at using the curvature tool and using the curvature tool along with the pen tool. We looked at the workstation, the workspace rather, and we used the Essentials Classic. And if something were to happen, our toolbars go away, we can go to Window, Workspace, and we can hit Reset Essentials. And one thing that is kind of a drag about resetting Essentials is the Layer tab goes away. So you can hit Window, Layers, and move your Layers tab into an area where you can see it, because that's helpful to have. New files, the Essential Classic Workspace, looking at colors of stroke and fill, the pen tool, the selection tool, and the direct selection tool for this basic introduction to Adobe Illustrator. Okay.